Well, welcome to the Community Baptist Church here on this beautiful Sunday night. We're so very glad to have you join with us. For all those online and in person, let's go ahead and sing that song together. What a Friend We Have in Jesus, hymn number 161. What a Friend We Have in Jesus. Mr. Barkley, if you'd lead us.
Brother Gary had me play at his church plant in 1976 in Sarasota on the trumpet in my mom and dad's living room. How would you like to sing in the living room? With here that was because we didn't have a pianist, all right? So we just played trumpet. So that's what we did. Well, we're going to have a instrument playing and give you an opportunity to do an offering as the Lord God would lead you. And then after we have that, then I believe we'll share some announcements with you. If you did not fill out how many gospel tracts you distributed, could you lift your hand in the air if you handed out a gospel tract and you didn't write it on the sheet? Could you put up any fingers and toes? All right, fingers and toes, all right? So that's the 6, 7, 8, 13. You next there, you handed out some, sir? No. All right. All right. Anybody else? 18. Anybody else handed out a gospel tract? Yes, ma'am?
Lori did 1.
19. Emma? How many?
I think 7.
Okay. 26. Anyone else hand out gospel tracts? Great. So, like you have you start today at 6. Of course, we're in here, so you can't do it right now. But as soon as the service is over, till next week at 6, keep track of that, all right? And that will be a blessing to us, all right? So if you'd like to give to the Lord's work, you can. If you'd like to give online, you can. If you want to drop it off to the church, I know we've had some folks do that this past week. That's great. We also had somebody we've never met before who works at the Holiday Inn Express called up and they said, you know, our hotel has all the supplies. It's all dated like for a month from now. Can your church pantry use it? She said, I've been to 3 pantries and nowhere to. I said, yeah, we can take it. She said, well, it's a Monday. Someone there. I said, well, someone will be there. How soon can you be there? So we scheduled it, and so we took the food and we've been distributing it besides the food we get from the Greater Lansing Food Bank and the other food. So it's pretty neat. She said, well, I'm putting you on our list. Because we get food, we're connected with all the Holiday Inns that are in the area, so we'll be calling you. And if you've ever been to Holiday Inn breakfast, my grandsons love that. They love those sausages that they have. And so they gave us a box of sausages and some muffins and some other food that we were able to get right out to a family that had a real need that next day. We were able to distribute it, and so that's a blessing. And I'm so looking forward to so many of the other things that we'll share with you in a moment. But first of all, we'll have a time of playing, all right, from the Wittens. I enjoyed that today, so I asked my son, can you have him do it again? He already got it done. I said, there you go. So not only can he do multitask, but he also can read minds, all right? So that's a good thing. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Welcome to Community Baptist Church, and for another church update. We wanted to do a quick video giving you an update of all the things going on at our church and thanking God for all the blessings He has provided for our church ministry. We hope that you're having a wonderful day today, and we hope that these updates will encourage you and inform you for the future. We hope to see you in our next services. We have some great things going on at our church right now. We just finished our couple seminar, and we are coming up on one of the biggest events in our church calendar year. That is our Next Step Sunday. Next Step Sunday is March the 6th at 11 a.m. You can see that up on the screen here. And that is a Sunday where our church binds together and we spend a service praying to God that He'll help us as we do our next step of reaching our community with the gospel of Christ by retiring the debt, which we did in our church just a few years ago. We had this 3-step process, and our church rose up together, and we retired all of the debt of the Community Baptist Church. We are now in the second step of 3, which is to rise up. That is to rise up and remodel our current church building to make it more accessible, more user-friendly, and more available to outreach for our community. You saw much of that work happen last year when we worked with upgrading our fellowship hall, redesigning our food pantry, making it more accessible, more storage so we can provide more for young people, classes, and adults that we could reach through the upgrade of our fellowship hall, new furnaces, air conditioners, new seating in the auditorium. And also, a second part of that second step of the rise is to rise up and build a new facility that can reach young people and adults and seniors with the gospel of Jesus Christ for years to come. And we are going to ask every one of you today and every day for the rest of this month up until March 6th that you would pray every day that God would provide for our church in a miraculous way. Building a building like this would be somewhere around $500,000. And our goal is to try to raise that money. And we are trying to raise that money piece by piece so we could go forward as a debt-free church, beholding to no one, and being able to have this building built in the next few years to reach the gospel of Christ. Someone said, how can that happen? Well, that can happen with God's people trusting an almighty and powerful God to supply for the church. And that event is on March the 6th. We ask that you start praying that God will provide for you in an extra way so that you can give, and praying that God will provide in an extraordinary way for our church to give together to see more funds come together so we can see those projects met together so we can continue to see these steps completed. We also have 2 upcoming events just here in the next week. Next Sunday night is our teen activity. That's February the 20th, and that'll be at 6 p.m. We hope to have any teens that can come out. And then February the 22nd is a ladies' night out event. We hope that you'll join us for any of these events. If you have any needs or questions, come see us after church today or at any time that you can. Contact us as we would love to help you in any way we can. Thank you for watching, and once again, we look forward to seeing you soon. Pastor reminded me, 3rd time is sometimes the charm. Some of you I know watched that video 3 times. We hope that it helped encourage you. Before we dismiss to the back, I did want to give you one brief announcement. Friday morning, very early, Pastor talked with Carolyn and Rocky Rockefeller about Rocky's progress, and they were just kind of just waiting to really see. As we talked about Wednesday night, his health was starting to deteriorate. And 30 minutes after Carolyn hung up with Pastor, Rocky passed away. And we are so grateful for the many years that Rocky was a help to our church. And Carolyn, of course, with that all happening, just really distraught because just on Tuesday they were talking about alternative options. Wednesday they were saying his health is shifting. And then Friday morning he was still here. And then, what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little while and vanisheth away. So we will we'll keep you informed. They're planning on having a memorial service in April. So pray for them and their family right now. This is definitely a different time for them. Continue to pray for the Green family. As Dr. Green passed away last week, they're going to have a service for him this week on Tuesday. Pray for that family as well. Pray for many families right now. This is definitely a different world that we're working in right now, with all of the people dealing with the COVID world and then the non-COVID world. As I said, I am one of the people who firmly believe that if today 70,000 people can watch a football game sitting within 1 foot of each other, on top of each other, that people can be in church as well. And I was waiting for the Gatorade. Several of you posted up this thing on social media that you were going to bring Gatorade today, and that if I want you to be that, so you're going to pour it on my head. I waited all day today. I stayed later after morning church. I came here early before service. No Gatorade. I see no Gatorade. So catch me next year on that one. We'll dismiss pastor's class to the back if you're in pastor's class. For those of you who don't know, there was a big meme that came out all this last week. That means photo picture on the internet that's supposed to be funny. I use the word supposed to be because usually it's not. And in the photo picture they say, all the pastors are going to tell you Sunday night, I want you to be just as excited for church as you are for the Super Bowl. And they said if that's the case, then who's got the Gatorade and who's dumping it on pastor? And several people tagged me in this. And I said, sure, bring it on, as long as it's the sugar-free. I like the zero Gatorade stuff, the zero one. I don't like not for the big sugar ones there. We got sick a while back, and we just ran out of the zero Gatorade, which is an interesting thing for me. Because when you're sick and you need electrolytes, you need those things, and I turned and said, okay, honey, go ahead and get out the stuff. I mean, just get me out the regular one. And listen, for a person who doesn't drink sugar, drinking 6 of those in one day, wow! The other day, I was out with my wife. It was very late. We stopped at McDonald's, and anyone knows McDonald's has terrible tea, absolutely atrocious. And normally I keep tea bags in my armrest, and I'd forgotten to restock. And so we didn't have tea. I didn't want to pop. And so I said, get me a milkshake. Fine. Mike goes, are you okay? I said, I got a headache. Give me a milkshake. Milkshake sounds great. Do you know how much sugar is in a milkshake? I was wired for like 4 hours. My wife's like, are you okay? No, I am awesome. So just want to put that out there. Well, let's go ahead and let's get these handouts handed out. Evelyn, you're already standing. You did so good of a job last time, Evelyn. Eli, Glory, come on up. Stephen, Caleb, you'll take all of you tonight. I'll take all of you. Come on up, guys. Here's the deal. Go start just handing them out to people. Here's 2 for Evelyn. Here's 2 or 3 for Caleb. Here's 2 or 3. There's church. There's that. Just knock all this stuff over. There you go. And Gloria, you get the last pile. Very good. Just go hand out to people. Find people. Go get them. Oh, yeah, right there. So, before we get started tonight, I would like to ask pardon. Normally on a Sunday afternoon, I take a nice, restful, relaxing afternoon. I sometimes even take a nap. If I don't take a nap, I read a book and I relax. This afternoon, we went to go pick my kids up from Saginaw, and we started on 127 North, and then realized rather quickly that the normal 1 hour and 30-minute trip was going to be longer than that with the snow. Thanks, bud. And then we realized as they shut down 127 North, and we couldn't see more than 3 cars ahead of us, that I was grateful my in-laws were meeting us in the middle, and they informed us they had no snow, which if you get past St. John's, it wasn't snowing. But it took my wife, honey, what did we say, an hour?
Too long.
Over an hour and something to drive from Frandor to St. John's. It was great. We were going like 7 miles an hour at some points. You could just see the flashing lights of the cars beside you and in front of you, and then all the cars in the ditch. After like the 3rd time, I rolled my window and said, hey, are you okay? And the person said, yeah, I'm stuck in the ditch though. Like, yeah, I already knew that. I was asking if you were okay. We were like, yeah, and I was like, why you keep on, like, they're like, they want you to help. I'm like, we have a minivan. We can't help them. I'm just checking to make sure like they don't need like emergency help. You know, I mean, I can't help you get out of the ditch. We have stow and go seating. We don't have tow ropes, okay? This is a different vehicle here. But it was amazing. So I will in advance say my normal eloquency, obvious that I normally have, might not be as much here today. As I got home, we then got back home, had to drive back through all of that, got home in time to sit down, eat my bowl of blueberries, and then get my shoes back on and get in the car and drive here. So we're going to have some fun tonight as we go through our lesson tonight. As we study lesson number 5, chapter number 5 in our book today. And chapter number 5, that is page 45 if you have the book that we're studying through, Helping a Starving Soul. Helping a Starving Soul, the disintegration of the family structure. God made institutions for a purpose. God made government for a purpose. God made marriage for a purpose. God made the family for a purpose. God made the church for a purpose. And Satan is attacking each and every single one of them. And to be honest, if you didn't know the end of the game, the final score that God's already won, if you were to look at the box score right now, you would sit there and say, wow, we're down. Because right now, Satan, in America at least, has complete and total hold over the majority of families. Satan has complete and total hold over the majority of marriages. Yesterday, we had Pastor Barker speak at our couple seminar, and he spoke about just the general way a marriage is supposed to run. And as I told my wife, I prefer to sit in the front. But at events like this, I have to sit in the back because I'm constantly running around. The golf course people need me. People are coming to grab me. I got to go take pictures. I need to get water. I said, I don't like it. And she said, why? I said, because I'm way too distracted. I mean, I am just so distracted. And I'm watching as he gave simple, just biblical tenets. And most of the room was nodding. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's good. And then I watch people who have been Christians for years go, I don't like that. And the funny thing is, people who do that don't realize that they make noise. Have you ever noticed that? It was a couple days ago, I sent my wife a video. As I explained before, I have weird hearing. I'm 50% deaf in one ear, and my hearing is supersonic in the other ear. And I finally found a video that explained my hearing, a version of it, by someone who has a much worse version of my hearing. Then I said to myself, honey, I want you to watch this, because like right in the middle, the lady describes what it's like to sit in a crowded room. I said, this is me. I sit at a table, and let's say me and my wife and Jason and Dana are talking. We're all talking at the table. And what you don't understand is the table 3 tables over, I hear them just as clearly as I hear Jason Barkley talking to me 3 feet away. Today, my wife and I went out to a quick meal and ran into Dan and Kim Sutter. They're members of our church for many years. And they sat a table away, and I heard every word at the table. I struggled hearing my wife 3 feet away. I literally had to focus. And so when we go to events like this, it's great for ministry purposes. Because I hear everything. Like when people talk in church, and I'm up here, I hear you, which Dave Comstock tells me is really good because the microphones work a whole lot like my hearing does. Because the mics in the room also pick up when people whisper in the room. And the people watching at home hear people talking too, which is quite fun for people at home who, like the Combs, have messaged me before and said, did you hear what so-and-so said, or this person said, or that person said? I can hear them in the background. And so it's great. But when we work in our world today, there's just simple things that are disintegrated. Government is no longer what it once was meant to be. The family is losing what it once was. Church is losing what it once was. People want church now to be a social hangout. I have zero problem with social hangout. I enjoy having fun. Next week we're going to have a great teen activity here at the church. I really am excited about it. But that shouldn't be the end all. Next week there'll be probably 10 to 15 teen turn. I'll be very, very excited about that. But there's not that many here tonight. Because when we announce fun, people come. And that's a good thing that they come. And it's getting that dichotomy of understanding. We want them to come. We want them to learn. But we have to teach them to value what's most important. And most people have switched, and we talk about this in the book, from right and wrong to fun and boring. And the family has disintegrated. In the late 1980s, ABC News, if I remember correctly, did a video. I watched it several times. And it shows an unwed mother who's pregnant with her second child. And they're asking her, do you need a husband? She said, no, I don't need a husband. I don't need a man. They said, why not? She said, between welfare, food stamps, and support from my grandma, I don't need a man. She said, in fact, it's less work. And we have come now to the solution that relationships take a lot of work. Ding, ding, ding. Anyone who's been in a relationship actually already knew that. But in America, our government has decided that we're going to reward people not to work. We reward people not to work in relationships. We reward people not to work in life. We reward people for doing what used to be considered abhorrent. This has created a disintegration in the family. Robert Savage once wrote this, and I do believe it to be true: children are the only earthly possession we can take with us to heaven. But here's the thing. I find that most people, most men and women, most grandparents, spend their every waking hour trying to get things that they cannot take with them to heaven until they're just about ready to go heaven. And then they decide to try to recoup the people they could have taken with them to heaven. What I mean by that is this. People will drive an extra 30 minutes to go to a sale, but they won't drive 30 minutes across town to take a grandchild and bring them to church. People will take an extra $100 to go to a special restaurant, but when it comes to sending the grandchild or a child to camp, $100 is way too much. When it comes to all these, they'll work, they'll pick up an extra shift or two, but to take their kid or their grandkid on a Saturday and say, hey, I'm going to teach you today how I pray. That's all we're going to do. That's all we're going to do. I'm going to work on prayer. I'm going to show you today how I read my Bible. Listen. If I save the whole world but lose my kids, I've lost. Today at the lunchroom, I heard a 17-year-old boy sit there and explain to his grandparents 2 tables over. By the time he's 21, he'll be a billionaire, and that will make him a success. They laughed. And I waited, because I actually knew this other table too. I waited for the Christian grandparent to say it, and he didn't. He looked at him and said, yep, you go make that money. That'll make you a success. And the thing is people don't really like it when you interrupt them at their 2 tables over when you hear their conversation, so I can't say anything. So I can tell you about it. Why I think the grandparent was joking, partly. What a better thing it would have been to say, if you make $1 billion, that'd be great. Think of all the missions you could support. If you make $1 billion, that'd be great. Think of all the orphanages you could build in South Africa. Hey, if you do all the things, that'd be great. But hey, let me tell you a better thing. What if you just won 1 soul to Christ? Hey, what if you never made $1 billion, but you married a good person, you had children, and trained them in the love of God? Would that not be a greater success? We're teaching young people the wrong priorities. The thesis of this chapter is quite simple. You'll find it at the very top of your notes. The family is falling apart. Because of this, the souls of youth are not adequately taken care of by their families. The question of this chapter is, why is the family falling apart? Why? Why is there a greater falling apart in the last 70 years than there's been in the course of human history? Right? There's never been more unwed mothers in human history than what there is now. Seriously. If I hear one more news commentator talk about the poverty of children and not talk about the poverty of their souls, I think I'm going to be sick. Hey, what we got to do is give them money. We in the United States of America for 70 years have thrown money at it. And so far, it has not worked. By the way, go ask any child if they'd rather have your money or your time. And if they're honest, every single one of them would tell you they would rather have your time. But people spend all their life trying to get this big bank account so one day they can die and give them the one thing the kid never wanted. Makes no sense. Quote of the chapter, children are the only earthly possessions we can take with us. Let's read this passage here. Let's see, in the Old Testament, God talks about this very, very beginning in Deuteronomy. He gives this command. It's called the Shema. My wife often wears this necklace around her neck. I found this passage a couple of years ago. I was challenged by it. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently to thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and upon the frontlets between thine eyes. This is a command given by God to Moses to tell every one of the dads in the nation of Israel. Let me be very clear on this one. Sometimes when I teach this lesson, I don't say this opening line. So let me be very open with this. I'm going to mention a lot men tonight. And that is because men were given certain jobs. And many of those jobs the men have not done. I commend many of the women who I have seen most of my life do a job they were never supposed to do. And many of them do it well beyond their means, well beyond their ability. But the general rule is just this: no one asked me ever or would think it wise if I tried to nurse a child physically myself. How many agree that is impossible for me to do? It was not meant for me to do. Now, I can bottle feed, right? But everyone would tell you, go even now to a public health, they'll tell you there's something valuable for a child to be physically nourished that way, if at all possible. There's certain things that are just meant to be. Certain things that only a mom can do, and certain things that only a dad should do. There's certain things that men were called to do. Certain things that women were called to do. And a lot of men have shirked their responsibilities and just said, you know what? Listen, it's my job to put bacon on the table, or it's my job to make the child, the sire of the child, but it's not my job to raise the child. And we have seen a disintegration of the family like never seen before. And God saw it in the beginning and gave this command to the children of Israel, to the men of the children, said, listen, this is your job. Teach these children diligently. You're to talk about it when they sit in your house. You're to talk about it when you're walking by the way. You're to talk about it when they lie down. And you're to talk about it when they rise up. He could have just shortened it and said every moment of the day. But I think God wanted to make it very, very clear. Every moment of life is to be a teaching moment about God. Tonight we're going to watch Super Bowl. My family is, when we get done. When we watch Super Bowl, it never ceases to amaze me. There has never been a game I've ever watched where at some point during the game, my dad turns something in the game into a spiritual moment. It's just what he does. Eddie's watched games of this before. Jason Barkley, I can't remember a game where there's not something in the middle of the game where Pastor doesn't go, oh, and by the way, this. And I'm like, how did you get that one? Because every moment is a spiritual teaching moment. We have a disintegration of families because there has been a severe failure of the fathers. That's our very first point. There's been a failure of the fathers. There's some statistics here I want to read real quick. I won't belabor them. I'll just make it quick. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 19.7 million children, more than 1 in 4, live without a father in the home. I'll say that again. If there are 4 children sitting in the room, 1 in 4 of them has no father in the home. By the way, in Lansing, the statistics are much higher towards that. It's more like 2.5 to 4. Young people who grow up without a father in the home are you ready for this? 4 times greater risk of poverty. 7 times more likely to be pregnant as a teen. More likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. 2 times more likely to drop out of high school. More likely to have behavior problems. More likely to suffer from child abuse. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. I get the joy of preaching at Camp Joy this summer. I preached there a couple years ago. I quite thoroughly enjoyed it. I often tell people I'll never forget the first time I was there as a kid, as a camper. I walked into the camp and we were in the cabin. It was the first time I'd ever seen it. See, I grew up as a good Christian kid and just part of life. And I grew up in the 90s. Even in Independent Baptist Church, where our church was very outwardly focused, it just wasn't a thing. Dads were in the home. Now, I remember being in this cabin of Christian kids because it cost $140 to go to summer camp. Single moms didn't send their kids to camp. And I remember sitting in the cabin, and there was 15 boys in the cabin. My brother and I are sitting there, and all of a sudden this kid goes, yeah, and one other kid goes, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know my dad. I've never met my dad. And I just remember, looking back, we were all jerks. Every kid in that room, but this kid was like a novelty. We'd always heard about this, but had never seen it. And I wish the counselor in the room would have had a little bit more maybe knowledge to deal with the subject, but I think he was just as intrigued as all of us were. Okay, so what's it like? Well, my mom does this and my mom does that. And they said, well, you mean you never... Because now we'd have it where, divorced families, right, where the kid would go see his dad every other weekend or something like that. But I never met my dad. My dad took off after he met I don't have a dad. My mom's never gotten married. There's 5 of us kid in the house, and we just go. I remember asking, so how do you do Daddy Donut Saturdays? That's the thing in my family. Every other Saturday, we'd go to a donut shop, sit down with my dad. My dad would explain life to us. I'd get a cup of chocolate milk, a Long John donut. Brother and I'd sit there, and my dad would walk us just through life. Here's how a dollar works. Here's how this works. Here's how that works. The kid goes, never had that. How do you play basketball? I don't play basketball. How do you do this? I don't do that. For about 40 minutes of us torturing this poor child. Finally, someone changed the subject. All week long, I tried to figure that kid out. It was a stark reality difference. 15 in the room, 14 with a dad, 1 without. He stuck out like a sore thumb. He couldn't figure out how to run it. Couldn't figure out how to work with us. Here's the thing, though. 4 years ago, Evangelist Micah Self, he was trained under Dave Young, was speaking to the young people at junior camp for us. Now, I was in the session. Stephen was in there with me. We were sitting in the back row. And he did a session on God's your dad. It's the most powerful session I've ever heard in my life for 3rd through 6th graders. Because the whole session was, there is a man who loves you. His opening gambit was this: how many of you do not have a dad in the house? 160 kids. There was 42 who had a dad in the house. Folks, that's 20 years. Your dad lives in the house every day of the week. How many of your dad lives in the house every day of the week? 42. Oh, I forgot. That included counselors, staff, and sponsors. See, the world's changing. Here's the thing. We keep looking at the world and go, why is the world so messed up? We aren't following God's plans anymore. Why are people so rude all the time? They didn't have Daddy Donut Saturdays. And moms did their best, but you see, there was a two-part system that was needed. See, moms create empathy. Moms are the ones who walk over and go, oh, you skinned your knee here. Here, let me get a Band-Aid. Let's fix it. Dads are the ones who go, you skinned your knee? Next time you'll break it if you don't jump higher. Get going, boy. Get up right now. Be a man. Come on. You can do this. Both love the child exactly the same. It's the way their love is emoted that's different. By the way, we've talked about this before. I'll mention it again. You get your love of God from your view of your family. God makes that very clear. God the Father. That's where you get your real view of your Father, is from God the Father. If you have a bad relationship with your Father, you'll struggle with God the Father. It means you'll struggle with eternal security. You'll struggle with love. You'll struggle with self-dependence. You'll struggle with self-emotion. You'll struggle with all of that. If you don't have a good relationship with your siblings, you'll struggle with Jesus Christ. That usually leads to doubts of eternal security. It'll lead to doubts of friendship. It'll lead to doubt with relationship with others, because all that relationship, Jesus sticks closer than a brother, comes from that view. If you have a bad relationship with your mom, you'll struggle with the Holy Spirit. Does not shock you. Independent Baptists really struggled with women for about 20 years there. A lot of them had struggles with their mom, the women in their life. So they struggle with the Holy Spirit too, the Comforter, the Paraclete. And if they struggle with that, they won't know how to pray. They won't know how to have relationships in the sweet communion of God. And those three relationships are important in a family. Without the three, something will always be off. One of the hardest people to counsel in this world is a man who refuses to act his age. I kid you not. I would rather, and I mean this, I would rather drive a nail through my hand, which I have done on accident before, than sit through another counseling session with a man who wants to be a boy. It is painful. It is grueling. It is one of the most embarrassing things you'll ever have to deal with. O God, thou art my God. Early will I seek thee. My soul thirsteth after me. My flesh longeth for thee in a dry and thirsty land where no water is. God says that is what a man is supposed to be. He gets up every morning and says, I thirst after God. I want to be like God. The average man today has a problem. What's wrong with dads? Well, what's wrong with a lot of men? They play silly games. I'm not against games. But when you read that the average man spends, I think they said 6 to 12 hours on their phone every week playing games. Is it a shock that no one has time to read books? Is it a shock that those men have no time to read the Bible? Myself and Brother Eddie were talking about this the other day. The Bible makes it very clear what a man is supposed to be. And the world is making fun of men because men aren't that. And if men don't do these things, then they act like children. They play silly games. They dress like kids. What in the world? There used to be a thing where men looked sharp. I mean, when I was a kid, my mom liked old movies. And if you knew my mom loved old movies. So I grew up watching old movies with like Humphrey Bogart, Frank Sinatra, Cary Grant. Cary Grant, my mom loved Cary Grant. I think I've watched every Cary Grant movie 3 to 17 times. Depends on which one it is. Arsenic and Old Lace was a hit in my family's house. If you've never watched it, then you don't understand much of my personality. Because I sit there and yes, you just figured this one out, didn't you, right now? Like right there, you can see it. The completely calm person drove completely and totally sane by the things happening around them. And it works. But when we see these guys, all of them, they dress sharp, they look sharp, they dress different. Now, everyone wants to look like a gangster. When did that happen? When did looking like a bum become the norm? I'm not saying you need to dress in a suit every single day. I don't do that. A pair of jeans can look nice. They really can. A work shirt can look nice. A t-shirt can look nice. But everyone nowadays wants to look like they just got dragged out of prison or dragged out of bed. Their hair looks literally like a baby bird that was just born. And I look at them and I'm like, what just happened to you? And they're like, man, this is just the world. Man, this is cool. I'm like, no, you look like an idiot. At least Elvis Presley, for all of his problems, his hair looked like something was done to it. You're like, Pastor, did you just praise Elvis Presley? Yes, you found one thing that I can praise Elvis Presley on. They dress like kids and they act like kids. They spend all their money on childish things. They spend all their money on games and toys. Listen, I'm not against fishing. I'm not against hunting. I'm not against anything. But I believe that our God in heaven has to sit there and look at a family where the man has all of his toys in pristine order and the best of all of them, and his kids wear shoes that look like they have holes in them and falling apart, and goes, that's wrong. I remember the story of J.J. Braddock, the famous boxer, who, when he was the boxer in the 1930s during the Depression era, who was told the story that when his family started to go hungry, that he, after his wife would bring him food, because he would go work all day long in the docks, that he would take the food that his wife would bring them and would cut it up secretly behind his wife and give it to their children, and would go days upon days without eating. Because he said, I will starve first before my children do. And you understand, this is dock work in New York City back in the 1930s, where they would work 14 and 16-hour days, and he would go without food to make certain that his kids had food in their stomach, because my kids will never go hungry. We live in a world today where I told my wife, I went to an event, and I watched as the parents looked at the kids and said, yeah, we buy steak for ourselves and we give our kids this. We do this for ourselves. I told you before, we pick up young people, and we picked up young people. And I remember picking them up and the kids getting on the bus, and the mom saying, I'm so glad you're taking the kids now, because on the night you take the kids, Dave Comstock, you were on the bus the night the story happened. When you take the kids on the bus, I'm going back to the house to cook steak, because if the kids are home, we'd have to share with them. Hopefully, Pastor Joe, you got food for them tonight. And I was grateful that night that a couple people in the church brought in our traditional peanut butter and jelly sandwiches we gave the kids. But I can't think of a world in my life where I'm going to give my child a peanut butter and jelly sandwich while I go eat a T-bone. See, fathers are focused on the wrong thing. See, we're supposed to press towards the mark of the high calling of God, of Christ Jesus. See, a lot of people are focused on some wrong. What are some things that fathers are focused wrong? What are some things we see people are focused wrong on in this world today? Let's open that up for a question here real quick. I have a few listed in the sheet. Let's see what you have. Someone? Eddie.
I go out and eat. It racks my mind, and I have to bite my tongue when I see
You and me both.
Men they're either out with their wife, girlfriend, significant other, whatever, or they got their kids, and they're just in the phone.
Yep.
And then the woman, the kids, whatever, everyone's in that, and that just...
No one's talking with people.
Yeah.
It's more important that I have a relationship with a person 10,000 miles away than the person sitting across from me. Someone else. What's things that they're pressing wrong towards? Let's talk with the adults tonight. What's things you see? Verge.
I see a lot of, like Eddie was saying, and I interviewed 6 people over the last week. There was only one person that looked me in the eye. It was a 21-year-old. I hired them.
Yep.
Because it looked me in the eye. I don't see that much.
They aren't taught general common courtesies. And that would be the table. I'd say that. When you talk to a person, you look them in the eye. You speak up. You come prepared. You dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Say some things that people are pressing towards wrong. They're pressing towards their jobs. Hey, listen. I love ministry. I love pastoring. I love the church. This is not my life. My life sits 2 rows back from the left-hand side. This is a job. One day I will be accountable for this job. I'm more accountable for Glory Inn than I am for this. Fathers are supposed to focus on. People, fathers are focused on money. The almighty dollar. Man, it matters. Well, Pastor Joe, if we don't have this house, our neighbors will think we're poor. You are poor. What was that? It's a Wonderful Life. No man is poor if he hath friends. Well, Pastor Joe, what are you saying? I'm saying that too many people want people to judge them on things that don't matter. They want people to judge them who don't matter themselves. At the end of your life, think who's going to sit at your bedside with you. Your boss won't. Your co-workers won't. So if they won't sit with you, why would you care? Do right because it's right, but be more concerned about the people who will be with you. Hey, there were people in this room today who, when Rocky Rockefeller passed away, went, "Oh, Rocky, man, I'm going to pray for Carolyn." And you really will. You'll probably even send a card. Because Rocky made an impact. And there was a connection. It was good. I'll guarantee you Rocky probably worked with some people for 40 years in his job who will not even care. That's how the world works. Money and job. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world, nor the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. I love this verse because it's very true. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. It's just not. You can't have both. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. What's some other things that fathers are focused on? Porn. Pornography addiction is higher than it's ever been. We have children in the room. I won't go too deep in it. It's just the honest truth. If there's an issue in your world, whether you're watching online or listening in here, there's some things you need to do immediately. It destroys your brain. It messes with you so badly. And the problem that I now have, and we're going to I'm going to just shift this just for a second, is that the highest, fastest growing group of people now who is switching to pornography is now women. Young women especially. Preteen girls. Preteen girls up to millennial girls are the fastest growing group in pornography now. Faster than men by a landslide. Our world is making a mess of it. They're also looking for fun. Another thing we see is lack of family communication. We talked about this just a minute ago. There's no more family table. Grow up. I was talking to builders a couple years back, and they were telling me that in the average home they're building today, they're no longer building a dining room. They just don't build one. Said families don't want dining rooms. I talked to a furniture salesman. He said the one thing we're getting rid of, go to a furniture store and just check it out. Walk into a furniture store, look for the dining room table section. It's the smallest section in the whole store. Because families don't eat around the table anymore. Go look at the TV section, the big recliners. Watch how much it's changed. Hey, can I tell you something? There's no family connection that happens while you watch a movie. You're in the same room together, but you're not growing together. Flip it to sitting around a table. I'll talk to couples, even couples who no longer have kids. They'll say, "Oh yeah, we used to sit at the table together. Now we just go in there and we watch the news and eat our dinner." Why get the table dirty? You're missing the point. You can't talk when someone else is talking over all of you. If the TV's on, no one in the family's talking. What will we even talk about? I don't know. How about the Bible? What happened to your kids? What happened to your grandkids? The news? How about the latest book you read? That's a great idea. Pastor, you really focus on this book thing. Yeah, I really do. I really believe in books. Paul on his deathbed saying, "Bring me books." They're important. The lack of a family table time has been a recent development. The family table time is when the whole family gathers together, eats a meal, and bonds together. Show me a family that doesn't eat at a table at least several times a week, and I will show you a family in trouble every single time. Well, Pastor Joe, how do you know that? Because I do marriage counseling. And I don't do it in the first session, but usually within about 5 sessions, I ask how often they eat at a table. And you know what? This is amazing. Out of the hundreds of couples I've ever done, I have never, and I mean never, had a family come in for marriage counseling that eats more than 5 meals a week at a table together as a family ever come into marriage counseling. 13 years. Pastor, it's a coincidence. You're probably right. Complete total coincidence that happened just like that. Or maybe it's a symptom of a greater problem. Because see, the reason why most people stop talking at the dining room table is because there's nothing to talk about. And they consider that TV has more important things to talk about. So the table isn't the magic cure. If it was, every family in America would go buy some mahogany right now and put it in their house. It's what happens there when families sit down and say, we are going to talk. But what? You. Because you're interesting. And you're valuable. Gathering of the family. What can you do at the family table? You can gather together. Sometimes it's just nice to know that someone likes you. Oh, Pastor Joe, I live alone. You know what? I got something for you. You need to find 5 other alone people. And you need to go together once a week and do something. And just gather. And then you could do this exact same thing here. We can't do it 5 nights a week. I didn't say you could do it 5 nights a week. But if you did it once a week, I guarantee you your mood will change in a month. You know what you can also do? The reporting of the family. It's amazing me. Parents are coming. I understand my team. My team seems so distant. I can't talk to them. It's like they never talk anymore. Well, for the last 7 years, you haven't had time to sit down with them at a dining room table and listen to any part of their world. And their friends every single day are standing at the school door. Hey, little Verge, what's going on? Verge, tell me the new stuff. Tell me. And then you come to them all of a sudden because now there's a problem and you want to know what's going on. They go, you haven't listened to me ever. You've never had time for me. Tom Brokaw had more time for you. NCIS had more time for you. All this other stuff. You had time for all of that. You never had time for me. Listen, every family that makes time, the kids will make time for you later. Then the responding of the family. Sometimes you just have to be able to sit there and let them report, and then you need to respond. I must teach you 2 things. How to hold your tongue and how to use it. 2 jobs of every father. 2 jobs of every mother. Told the story before and it's true. 17 years old, my mom came into my room, took a Bible verse and pinned it to my bulletin board, pointed at the verse and said, son, if you never listen to a single word I say, learning this verse that even a fool when he holdeth his peace is counted wise. Let this be my greatest lesson I teach you. Joe, you need to learn when to shut up. My mom turned around and walked out of the room. Sat there. Do I talk too much? It never clicked. 2 days later, she came back in. Have you looked at the verse? Yeah. Why'd you put the verse there? Son, you talk too much. Oh, I guess I talk too much. Over the next 6 months, I'm going to work with you on this. Did she succeed? I don't know. Talk less than I used to. Probably talk more than I still should. But she made an effort. And it's been 17 years now. It'll be 18 years next week, so it was the day after my birthday she did it. I still remember it. The conclusion, the family is troubled and men need to do something about it. It's time for men to grow up and lead again. I'm not against women, I'm for them. I believe they've done a great job being handicapped, asked to do 2 jobs when they were only supposed to do 1. It's not fair. Guys, do your job. Do it well, and make it work. Let's have some questions. Number one, how has the family changed since you were a kid? Someone, we only have a minute here, so let's just go there. None of the kids can answer these questions because they're still kids.
Yeah.
So just adults, how has the family changed since you were a kid? Virgil.
Like you said in your discussion, is communication. And I used to go over to my aunts after work. We would sit down at the big table, make food, and we just talk. And the kids listen to the adults. And greatest time of my life was that.
Number two, how could you help the fatherless? I don't want you to answer this question. I just want you to think about it. We just said that 1 in 4 children in America is fatherless. What can you do to help the fatherless? 2 nights ago, I sat down with my father-in-law, who I have great respect for. Many, many years ago, my wife's dad passed away. My wife was retelling that story yesterday at the banquet. She was telling that to someone. They said, "Oh, it's terrible. How did you make it?" And my wife said the same thing I've heard her say 100 times. She said, our church family and the men in the church family stepped in the role. And they did. She said multiple of the men became extra dads. Her grandpa, who was happily retired, said, "I'll be a dad." And just was. And then one day, George Gaines said, "I could be the dad. I'll marry that lady and be a stepdad to 6 kids." Crazy dad. And did it. And did it well. Now, most of us men are married, so we can't do that second job, but we could do the first job. Find a fatherless child and say, "Hey, I'm going to help you." Finally, what was the family table like when you were a kid, and how would you change it for the better? I think Virgil already answered this question, but I think we can add to it just one last thing. The way that our world could change it for the better today is if they added more devotion time to it, added consistency and faithfulness. Thank you for joining with us tonight. We're going to go ahead and close an invitation, and then we'll let you be dismissed. Marty. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, thank you for teaching us, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for how much you blessed us with. Thank you, Lord, for your goodness and grace. Lord, I pray that we will not forget, Lord, that you love us, and that we will continue to follow you in everything we do. Lord, I pray, Lord, as we right now pray for our nation, that men will choose once to lead again, that we can make that decision together. How many in the room would say right now, "Pastor Joe, I agree with you on the situation of our world today. And right now, I'm going to pray right now that God will bring a revival either in me or in the world around me." If that's it, would you raise your hand right now? A lot of hands. Right now, as the instrument plays just one verse, as it plays, will you pray for a revival and a rebuilding of the family? Marty? Thank you for joining us tonight. We pray that God will continue to bless you and keep you till we meet again. You are dismissed.